Good morning, everybody. Nikki Burnett here. Today's Taste Life Nutrition radio and podcast streaming live on kuhsdenver.com. Today we're talking about some really cool stuff. And so this is a little bit of a unique situation where when Douglas and I first had a conversation, there's so much to talk about and so much to address and so much to cover that I was like, we're going to do a series. We're going to do this 3 weeks in a row and really dig in and have some fun with it. And so this is Douglas Mulhall. Yes. Am I saying it properly?
Correct.
Awesome. And I'm so grateful that you're here. This is going to be really cool stuff that you're going to help us to all learn and understand, and is a little bit outside of what we generally think, right? Which is what we want. So super exciting. Thank you for being here.
Well, thanks for having me, Nikki, and also thanks for digging into this at this level of depth. I think there's a lot of great things that people haven't heard before.
Yeah, agreed. So, cool. Let's just do this. Let's jump in. I like to kind of start with your story. I think that helps us, it makes it relatable, helps us understand how you got here. I love that, so often there are trials and troubles and things that happen that bring us to where we are today. So I really like to know a little bit about your history and share that so we can get a feel for what moves you and what excites you about what you're doing today.
Okay, I'm going to make this brief because actually people I find don't really want to hear about me, even though they want to hear the story.
Okay.
But
Yep.
Basically, for the past 30 years, I have been pioneering the development of healthy products and the standards that are used to actually measure the development of those healthy products to make sure that we don't get a lot of greenwashing. So that has been going on for a long time. We've done stuff all around the world with multinational companies, governments. We've worked in Brazil, Russia, China, United States, Canada, you name it. It's been all over the place. And the difference between what we've been working on, and I say we because we really have a team, it's not just me. The difference between this and sort of your conventional environmental so-called sustainability stuff is that when you hear people talking about environment, they're always talking about reducing our negative impacts. Because naturally people are bad for the environment, right? We're somehow separated from it. Well, we basically came out about 30 years ago and made ourselves really popular by saying that's a bunch of nonsense.
Good. Love it. I love it.
We basically said, wait a minute, humans are part of the environment, and we come from it, and we actually have the capacity to do a lot of good things for it. And we have also done a lot of good things for ourselves. So instead of always talking about how to be more eco-efficient and how to reduce our badness, how about maximizing our goodness?
I love it.
And that theme has run over the last 30 years. And I just give you, one concrete example of this, and that is, when you get carpet manufacturers talking about how green their product is, they always say, oh, well, it's recyclable and, it doesn't emit toxic gases. Well, we did something completely different with one of the world's largest carpet companies. We said, how about a carpet that cleans the air? So
Amazing.
We actually developed with them a carpet that sucks the pollutants, the particulates out of the air and into the carpet and can be removed with a vacuum cleaner. It's called the Airmaster. And it ended up being actually their best-selling product. And the company was sold for, a gazillion bucks. I didn't get any of it, unfortunately. But it's been a fantastic success. And it's an example of being more good than less bad, because you're actually improving the quality of the air in the most important place, and that's where people spend 85% of their time indoors.
Well, and I think the things that people don't realize is when they put new carpet, whether it's in their business or in their home, that it's full of horrible toxins, right? It's full of fire retardants and all of these things that are completely carcinogenic. We're putting in our homes, we're letting our kids walk on them and crawl on them, and our animals and ourselves, we lay on them, and it's it's terrible. It's terrible. And so good for you. Yeah.
And we recognized that. And what we did was we optimized the materials in the carpet so they didn't do that.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like a baseline point, but that's not going to distinguish you to your customers. You know, it's nothing unique. Everybody should be doing that. It's a no-brainer. You know, recyclable, doesn't off-gas, all this stuff. This is something different. This is something special, a carpet that cleans the air. So it does exactly the opposite of all the nasty stuff that people are worried about carpets doing. And it's used in hospitals now in different parts of the world, and it's just been a fantastic success story. So at a professional level, that's been my interest. My interest is to make positively defined products that protect human health, improve human health, and improve environmental health. That's the, you know, the nuts of it.
Yeah.
But you mentioned the personal journey. So alongside of that, I've got a situation that so many other people have, and that is that chronic disease, you know, it doesn't run in my family really, it kind of gallops.
Yeah.
So, you know, all kinds of my ancestors have had, especially heart disease, but also, you know, my mother died of cancer, my father died of heart disease, and I started to see when I was in my 30s that I was heading down that road. That was for sure. And I was starting to see some of the warning signs. And so I started looking into what it is that really triggers heart disease. You know, because basically what happens when a doctor sees that you're starting to get hardening of the arteries or you're getting high blood pressure, what do? They put you on a bunch of pills, statins, and all this stuff. Now, I want to be clear that there's nothing per se wrong with that in terms of a Band-Aid solution, but it is not going to help you reverse the course of the disease.
Right.
In other words, it's being less bad and not more good.
Potentially, but it also can create more problems, right? Downstream effects. It's, you know, brain function,
that's exactly.
muscle function.
And that's one of the problems with being less bad.
Yeah.
Just, you know, as an example,
yeah.
We're always trying to reduce the amount of materials in cell phones in order to reduce their impact on the environment. But you know what that allowed us to do? It allowed us to manufacture 4 billion cell phones, which produced a huge demand on resources. Yeah. This is called the rebound effect, unintentional consequences.
Yep.
And so you're right on to say that is a huge problem.
Huge
Absolutely.
Problem. Agreed.
So that's basically where, you know, I was coming from when I applied my professional background to looking at health.
Yeah.
And it's really amazing because there's this glass wall between environment and health. You know, I so many of my colleagues that work on environment, I say, you know, the most important thing about environment is health. And they go, no, we don't work on health. the hospitals and the doctors work on that. We work on environment, you know, and health is the byproduct of it. And I was going, sorry, guys, that is completely off.
It is completely off. And it's what's frustrating too is it happens in medicine, it happens everywhere, but we have blinders, or we have, well, basically blinders, where this all we see is what's in front of us, and it's not everything else around us, and everything is connected, right? So we talk about our, you know, ankle bone being connected to our ear bone, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah. But it's all true. Yeah. You and I are connected. We are all connected. The environment's connected. We're connected to the environment. We are connected to the electricity of the environment, and to say that what is going on in our air and in our water and in our food is not perpetuating the chronic illness, the amazing amounts of chronic illness that we're struggling with every day and everywhere, well, it just doesn't make any sense because it's all connected.
Yeah, but the thing is that, you know, everybody's got that message, even though there's a lot of deniers out there. But what they don't get is the approach to it. And the approach until now has been to reduce these negative impacts, and that you never catch up. Yeah. You know, because technology is running ahead, and you just never catch up unless you start with a proactive stance. Yeah. And that's basically, you know, what I looked at doing and how I came across what we're about to talk about, which is the elastic of life.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll jump in because this is such a, well, it's just the stuff like you had said to me and what we had talked about. This is the stuff that we don't hear and nobody talks about. So jump on in.
Yeah, and I'm going to give you three examples of things that are either in clinical trial or in the marketplace right now that most people have never heard of, that have a whole lot to do with improving people's health. And then I'll get into how this links into this thing called the elastic of life. So this year, there are a set of clinical trials going on for healing aneurysms. Now, anyone who knows someone who has aneurysms, and by the way, there are 10 million Americans who have aneurysms, knows that the treatment for them is to watch and wait.
Yeah.
That's the treatment. Mm-hmm. Maybe put you on blood thinners, mm-hmm. you know? And so they watch and wait until the aneurysm grows and grows and grows and gets to 5 millimeters. And then what do? They cut you open in a life-threatening operation and try and fix it. Mm-hmm. So that's our current approach to this therapy. This clinical trial that is going on right now has taken a completely different approach. What it has done, it has taken a naturally derived substance and injected it right at the point of the aneurysm, and this substance is not a normal drug. What this does is it kickstarts the self-repair process in the artery. Mm. So in the first-in-human studies that they found that the aneurysm stopped growing.
Wow.
So this was a first. Mm-hmm. This was an absolute first. And the reason that the aneurysm stopped growing was because the wall of the artery mm-hmm. had been repaired. Amazing. And so the aneurysm stopped bulging out, because that's due to a weakness in the wall yep. of the artery.
Right.
So once the artery was strengthened again, then that stopped it from happening. And there is some indication that the process can be reversed, and that's what they're trying to figure out in the mm-hmm. clinical trial, is how far they can go with this. But the interesting thing is this: they're still looking for people in the clinical trial, right? I know people who have aneurysms, they've never heard of this. They've never been told about it. It's never been on NBC, CBS, and ABC, right? Yeah. It's not there. Mm-hmm. And so that's why we're doing this show, and that's why I wrote this book that we're going to be talking about, was to help to make people aware of this type of breakthrough. So there you have a very concrete result of what happens when you use a natural-based therapy to specifically target this thing known as the elastic of life. And I'll get to that, what is it, in a moment. The second thing is that today in the market, there is actually a cosmetic product called Elastin. And this actually uses the same substance that is being used to heal those aneurysms for skin. And it's actually, it's a mail order, like over-the-counter therapy. You don't need a prescription for it. And it was developed by the same scientists who actually discovered this substance. So this isn't some wacko garage, invention. Yeah. This was done at Clemson University in South Carolina over a period of 20 years after huge research done with the support of the National Institutes of Health. So I'm not talking about, oh, it's a miracle. No, this is all peer-reviewed, published mm-hmm. stuff.
Mm-hmm. Is it a supplement or is it a topical?
It's a topical.
It is.
Okay, and they're using this ingredient. And my wife and I have used it. It does give some interesting results. I'm not going to start, talking about all the results on it. The only thing I'm saying is that this new therapeutic substance is also in the market in the form of a skin cream. So that's another thing that's happening right now, and I can guarantee you most people, have never heard of this stuff.
Yeah. So can we go back to the aneurysm just real quick?
Sure.
Because, we're talking about, so the Elastin is on the skin. So I'm assuming that as a product used for the aneurysms and other things that you'll get into, it is a supplement, like you have to ingest it?
No. That's a drug. So that's why it needs approval by the FDA, and that's why the clinical trials are going on. So with the skin cream, it's a different regulatory regime.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, the substance goes into the skin cream. You don't need FDA approval for it. And so, you know, anybody can use it if they buy it. With the normal caveats, you put anything on your skin, you know, you've got to watch that you don't have a reaction to it. So I'm not trying to give you a sales pitch here. I have no ownership in the company whatsoever. I'm just saying that, yeah, naturally you always have to check. But the stuff that's being used in the aneurysm is delivered through a medical device, a catheter, that some people might identify as a stent, and they just deliver it right to the point of the aneurysm. So that's a very different. But the interesting thing about those two things is you can see the diversity that you can use to approach this problem.
Yeah.
And that's what's really interesting about it. So there you have, you know, two really great examples. Now the question out of that is, what is it fixing?
Yeah.
What is it fixing that we haven't been targeting before? Well, it's fixing something that I call the elastic of life. And it is commonly known and referred to as elastin. And this is an elastic substance that is in any part of your body that moves or expands and contracts. Just let me repeat this to be absolutely clear about this. So whether it's me talking as I am now, or pointing my finger, or moving my arm, or your heart pumping blood, or your lungs breathing air in and out, or an athlete throwing a football, or anything like that, that is all enabled by one simple thing. And most people, you know, they think, well, it's muscles or it's collagen. No, those are not the real enabler. The thing that stretches back and forth, and I'll just for people just who aren't listening but are watching, you know, this elastic, it expands and contracts from 0 to 8 times its standing length in a fraction of a second, and it snaps back, and that's why you can move around like that so quickly. And the other interesting thing is, this goes on billions of times in your life, whether it's your heart beating or your lungs absorbing air and pumping things in and out. So this is one of the longest lasting substances in your body. So this is elastin, and it's actually known technically as elastin fiber, because it actually combines with a lot of other things in your body to create this actual fiber that does this elastic thing. So the elastin is actually the protein, and then it combines with all of these other substances in your body to create this fiber. And then this fiber is woven in between the fibers of collagen that everyone hears about all the time. Oh, you know, in order to keep your body elastic, you have to restore your collagen. Well, that's nonsense, because collagen does the opposite.
Right. Yeah. Which was shocking to me. Right. I know my world.
Collagen.
Yeah.
Exactly. It keeps your body firm and strong, but it doesn't keep it flexible. It actually like kind of stiffens it. So it's the elastin that your body has used to make that strong and firm stuff also flexible at the same time. It's a miracle of what goes on in your body, those two things tied in together. And the astonishing thing is that because no one knew how to fix the elastin, and we'll get into that in a moment, no one knew how to fix the elastin until recently. All the cosmetics companies were talking about collagen because they kind of knew how to, you know, help that and repair that and do those things. So you hear it all the time. Keep your skin flexible, repair your collagen. Well, it just doesn't, no, it's not true.
Right. Well, everybody is taking collagen these days, right? I mean, and there's a lot of, you know, discrepancy. Is it absorbable? Is it not? Do we take it? Do we not take it? And there's a lot of questioning about it. But just as you said, is that really what's making what we need to be doing? And so, yeah, I mean, so what happens as we age, our elastin stiffens?
Right. So let me just go through it. But before I do that, just on the collagen point, okay? There's nothing wrong with repairing your collagen. You know, how you do that is a very controversial topic. I'm not
Right.
going to get into that.
Right.
But just to say, just because collagen doesn't keep you flexible doesn't mean you don't need it.
Sure. Yeah.
So yes, there's no question about it. It's a good thing to also repair that collagen. But oddly enough, one of the biggest threats to the collagen is the elastic fiber. And so here's what happens. First of all, it's really important to understand that elastic fiber is one of the most complex substances in the whole human body, and as far as I'm concerned, on the face of the earth. It's, the body's process that forms elastin fiber is so complicated. It has to do with different cells emitting different materials, and then those materials are thrown out of the cell, and they combine together in thousands of chemical reactions that then wind together in this fiber. It is so complex that the world's top scientists, who I know, still are scratching their heads a bit about exactly how the process takes place. They haven't sort of unwound the whole process yet, which explains one reason why it's been so difficult to treat. So what happens is that elastin fiber, of course, is subject to wear and tear, but from a whole bunch of things like life. That's everything from diet to over-exercise, to disease, to smoking, to doing all kinds of bad things to yourself. All of those things actually attack the elastin fiber in your body, and it starts from age 0. Okay, so the elastin in your body is basically forms from 0 until you're a teenager, and then it tapers off. And so the result of that is that it's really not replaced, and so it starts to degrade over time. And so think of the obvious. If you have a product inside you that is no longer being rejuvenated and it starts to degrade, you're going to degrade along with it.
Sure.
And that degradation takes the form of an incredible variety. Oops, sorry about that. I'm just going to decline that. I apologize.
It's okay.
Yeah, okay. Get rid of that program. Never mind. So, apologies for that.
Okay.
So, the examples are sagging skin, right? Wrinkles. So that is the elastin beginning to degrade.
Yeah.
And so that's the most visible sign of it. And it only starts, when you're in your late 20s, but that starts to make sense when you understand that that's about when the elastin fiber stops assembling and starts falling apart. So it's under attack from age 0. So you have to really learn how to take care of it and how to prevent those attacks from damaging it. So another example is an injury to a tendon or ligament. Any athletic person will tell you, this is a huge problem. Pro teams spend millions, they lose millions because their athletes are out with tendon and ligament injuries. That's because when the tendon rips, the elastin fiber is ripped, and because after your 20s it isn't repaired, it gets replaced with scar tissue. And that's why they have all these operations and everything else, because they can't repair that elastic fiber. Another example that millions and millions of people and many of your listeners understand is high blood pressure, hypertension. So high blood pressure is caused by the stiffening of the arteries. That stiffening, although it is a very complex process, is kicked off when the elastin fiber starts to degrade, because it sends out a help signal. Help, I'm being attacked, right? And all this, and your body sends all these inflammatory substances to it to clean away the damage and start to fix it. The problem is, it's not being fixed anymore.
Right.
So you get this vicious cycle. of damage, inflammation, hardening, damage, inflammation, hardening. And it's imperceptible in your 20s, but then it starts to be noticeable in the form of, having more trouble getting up in the morning, being a little more tired. All of that is a function of your arteries starting to stiffen.
Yeah.
That is directly caused by the degradation of this elastin fiber that no one has heard about.
Right. Yeah.
So, and so the drugs that you're being given for this, they actually have very little impact on they have no impact whatsoever on repairing the fiber. They might relax the arteries, but again, that's a Band-Aid solution that goes on your whole life. You're on these hypertension drugs, for your whole life.
Mm-hmm.
So lung diseases like pulmonary artery hypertension, or pulmonary hypertension, which is the arteries in your lungs getting stiff, exactly the same process, right? That is caused by the degradation of the elastin fiber. And finally, and surprisingly, cancer. So cancer has figured out a really smart way to feed itself in the body. It triggers cells to create the building blocks for elastin fiber, and those building blocks are proteins, and those proteins are very nutritious for cancer.
Fascinating.
So
yeah.
Cancer actually first tricks cells into producing this, what's known as tropoelastin. It's a precursor of elastin fiber, and then it gets other cells to degrade it, and it eats the byproducts, and that's how cancer spreads. That's one way that cancer spreads.
Mm-hmm.
So regardless if it's injuries or heart disease or anything else, there is a link to this this elastic of life. It's absolutely amazing how fundamental it is to our health, our disease, and our aging.
So there's so much here.
That's why I stopped.
I know. I know. Well, it's a lot to unpack, because if we have okay, so let me ask you this. It starts to degrade through, say, you said in our 20s it starts to degrade. When we get to our 20s and we begin experiencing symptoms, whatever it is, whether it's wrinkles or whatever, do we have the ability, like somebody right now is listening, says, okay, that's in their 30s, I want to reverse this damage. Can you reverse it? And obviously I would assume you can halt it to a degree if you change your diet, change your lifestyle, get rid of toxins, things, that we'll get into. But can you without the drug, can you reverse it? What can you do about
Okay, there's a real short answer, and the answer is, in the lab, yes, it's been done.
Okay.
And that's why I talked about these clinical trials, because they're in the process of seeing how well it can be done. And before we get to that, I want to show you, and for people who are just listening, I'll describe it. But I'm going to hold something up here, and this is can you see that?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, so these are two images, and on one side over here is the image of elastin fiber in a 6-year-old, and on the other side is elastin fiber in a 90-year-old. And you can see, again, for the people who are listening, that it's nice and smooth, in the 6-year-old, and it's a mess. It's all frayed and frazzled in the 90-year-old. That's what's going on in your body. That is aging. There's the picture of aging right there.
Fascinating.
Okay?
Yeah.
That's what's going on. So the question is, how can you kickstart the process to restore that to this picture here in the 6-year-old? And the answer to that is this substance. And I'm just going to say it once because it's not that important, but it's called pentagalloyl glucose. Pentagalloyl glucose. And the thing about it is, it's a substance that's found in fruits, in grapes, it's in red wine. It's known as I'm not going to go into that much detail on it because people will go, oh, what's that? But it's called a polyphenol.
Right.
And a lot of people have heard about polyphenols because they're in red wine, and they say that, it's good for you. So the problem is that polyphenols are not present in a high enough concentration to repair the damaged elastin in your body. They do help to maintain it. They do help to slow down this process of degradation. And that's answering your question about what people can do.
Mm-hmm.
You can actually, the normal advice of eating a balanced diet and, looking for things that contain polyphenols, those are examples of how you can slow down the process. And I'm going to get into other things in a moment, but I just want to stick onto this PGG, the pentagalloyl-glucose, for a moment.
Yep.
So what scientists at Clemson University discovered was that when you concentrate the PGG and you inject it into an animal that has damage to their elastin fiber, the elastin fiber starts to reassemble. Now, why do I say reassemble? That's because, oddly enough, your body keeps producing the building blocks for elastin as you age, but they don't assemble. That's the problem.
Okay.
And those building blocks start to cause a problem as well. They're circulating in your blood because they haven't assembled into the fibers where they're supposed to be. This substance actually allows that reassembly process to occur. Very complex chemical process, and that's why it took so long to discover it. So this was discovered in 2007 by Professor Naren Vivahari at Clemson University. And it's taken until today for this to start reaching the clinic after a lot of experimentation. So that shows you, where we went from discovery until now. And I'm going to later talk about why this has taken us so long when this stuff is all over our body and we should be focusing on it. But the main point is, answering your question, there are two things that people can do. They can do all the normal things that they're told to do. Don't smoke, because heavy metals in cigarette smoke and heavy metals generally are really awful for elastin fiber. They chew it up. They disrupt the process, and it's bad news. So anything that involves, getting heavy metals into you, try and keep those out of you. So that includes buying foods that have been certified free of heavy metals, not smoking, and most importantly, as I mentioned before, with the carpet that cleans the air, having clean indoor air that doesn't have heavy metals and other toxic particulates in the air. You can control that. You spend 85% of your time indoors. So if you have really good filtered air through an air conditioning system or an air handling system, or even a local air handling system that's right beside you, you can do a lot to protect this elastin fiber from being degraded by these toxins. So those are things that everybody can do. But then you get to the therapy part, which we've just been talking about, and I mentioned at the top of the show, and that's what they're focusing on right now.
So if it's okay, I'd like to expand on that just a little bit, because when it comes to the toxins and the metals, these are things that I look for all the time, because I think we don't understand, because we may feel symptoms, but we're thinking that our body's just attacking ourselves. Our body's not happy, or whatever it is, it's dysfunctional. And one of the things that I'm trying to get away from myself, because I'll say the term dysfunction a lot, but I truly believe that the body is a miracle. It knows exactly what it's doing and what it does, and the symptoms that it has is it's talking to us, and it's doing what it knows how to do to protect us. And so I try to get away from talking about it as being dysfunctional, because I think it's doing what it's supposed to do. Now,
well, Nikki, there's a. Can I interrupt you? I apologize.
Yeah, no, fine, go ahead.
There's a yes, but.
Okay. Yeah. Great.
Yeah, I mean, the yes is absolutely that your body has evolved over billions of years, and it's learned a lot about how to take care of itself. Unfortunately, it has a built-in defect. Homo sapiens are a relatively new species on the face of the earth. We're not like whales, and sharks that have been around for like 350 million years. We've been around for maybe 350,000 years. And so the result of that is, our bodies have been busy building these big brains that get us into so much trouble and do such wonderful things. At the same time, the way that we've evolved is different from the way that sharks and whales, and I say sharks and whales because they have a brain that is similar to ours in its relationship to body weight. And so I'm talking about these higher animals. And the reason that that's important is because there's certain species of shark and whale that live to be between 250 and 350 years old. So the question is, why aren't we? I mean, they're exposed to all the stuff that we're exposed to. You know, they're exposed to aggressive environments and everything else, and yet they have this extremely long lifespan. The reason for that is because their body does something that ours doesn't. As our body falls apart as we age, and specifically the elastin fiber starts to fall apart, the immune response of the body is to try and fix it, and it goes into overdrive and it turns against you. So as you age, your body gradually, imperceptibly at the beginning, turns against you and starts causing all of these allergies, autoimmune response reactions, and everything else. So you are absolutely correct to say that the body is a miracle and it can certainly repair itself if it's given help. There's no doubt about that. But we need to recognize that the body is not perfect. We are in the middle of human evolution, and we're a long way from being perfect as a human body. And so we have to figure out a way to help the body overcome that fundamental defect. And one of the ways of doing that is to restore this elastin fiber that the body has forgotten how to do.
Right, and so I think this could go into a whole different direction. I believe that the body is made perfectly. So it is, you know, I'm coming from a Christian perspective, and I believe that the body's made perfectly, but I also know that we're not built to live forever, right? And so I know this, and I know we're gonna degrade, and I know that we're all gonna have our time and move on, right? We're gonna die. So the point though is, I think that we're coming from the same place, that we have to help the body. We've got to understand how to help the body to do its job, right? So it's us listening to the symptoms. And kind of where I wanted to go with this, only briefly though, is the fact that we can look at the body by running, labs and understanding the toxic burden that we have. We can look at, at heavy metals in the tissues. And heavy metals are hard, and I know you know this, but heavy metals are eliminated via the saliva, the blood, the stool, the urine, the hair. It's all over the place, and different metals are eliminated in different ways, and so it can be kind of difficult to pin it down because there's really no perfect test for metals, where there's good tests for mycotoxins and bacteria and all of these other things. But we can do testing to have a clearer understanding of our toxic load, and when we know that, we can address it, which then is going to help, we're going to eliminate it as the best we can, and it's going to help our elastin to work longer.
And you just gave a great teaser for the next show.
Yeah.
Because our next show is going to be about these heavy metals, what they are, where they're coming from, what's being done about them, what isn't being done about them. That's why I kind of veered off course there, because I don't want to get too deeply into it in this show. What I was hoping to do is answer, and this is a rhetorical question, is why has so little been done about elastin fiber if it's in every breath we take and every step we make? I mean, think about it for a moment. It's related to most of the chronic diseases that affect us. It's related to keeping us healthy. It enables us to do every single movement. I can't emphasize that enough.
Right.
So why is it that only 3 scientific areas in the whole world, and I would say areas, I mean 3 universities in the whole world at this point, have succeeded in finding different ways to kickstart the elastin fiber process? Another one, for example, is in Australia with Professor Tony Weiss at the University of Sydney, who developed a scaffold that elastin fiber grows on, and it's used to repair wounds.
Cool. And
this is actually further ahead than a lot of the other elastin repair technologies, because it was sold to a pharma company for $250 million. It was the biggest buyout of a startup in Australia's history. Just think about that for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
So this is really exciting stuff, and it's being used now in clinical trials. There have been 3 clinical trials for wound repair for this, and it's great, and it's wonderful. And they raised $250 million to actually do this, but it took them 20 years.
Wow.
And it has taken Professor Vivahari and the companies that have licensed his product almost 20 years now to get to this point. And the question is, why the heck is that?
Mm-hmm.
And why are there so few institutions actually working on the therapy, even though thousands of scientific papers has been published over the past 50 years, and elastin was discovered more than 100 years ago? And that is what really gets my blood boiling.
Mm-hmm.
Because to me, this is one of the great hidden tragedies of medical research that we have got to fix. And it has to do with the regulatory system,
Yep.
and it has to do with the Band-Aid solutions that are costing trillions of dollars in terms of pharmaceuticals that are being used to treat the symptoms instead of the cause.
Right.
And I know everyone has heard that, but when it comes to elastin fiber, this comes out big time, because guess what? When you start repairing elastin fiber in hypertension, what do you think is going to happen to all the hypertension drugs that together generate about $250 million a year in revenues? Let me see now. Now, I'm not saying that this is a conspiracy. It's just more a question of obvious vested interests.
Well, it's motivation, right? If you're
motivation, inertia.
They're not motivated to lose money.
No, I mean, hey, we've got these people on hypertension drugs for the rest of their lives,
Mm-hmm.
and you want to fix this?
Mm-hmm.
No, we're not going to do that, well, maybe we'll buy it up and sit on it for 10 years, and all of those things are actually happening. So, unfortunately, this is where I get on my pedestal. It's time for people to get mad as hell and say, we have a right to this. We have a right to these therapies, and start asking your physician and your drugstore providers and your politicians and the FDA, why aren't you paying attention to this, to restoring elastin fiber in the body when it's connected to so many of these diseases? Which brings me to the next thing.
Yeah.
The problem with our whole regulatory system is that it's set up for individual diseases, mostly individual drugs on individual diseases. Now they're getting into multiple drugs for individual diseases. But what they're not getting into, and this has frustrated the whole longevity community for the past decade, is holistic, systemic approaches to all of those conditions. And get rid of them by getting at the core issues that also affect our longevity. And I'll just give you an example. The world's first conditional approval for a drug that's directed at improving longevity was given by the FDA this year for a dog. Not for a human, okay? And this was a really smart move by the startup company that did this, because they figured, well, why should we, go up against all of these, single approach things for regulation for humans, when actually the pathway for animals is a lot easier. The bar is a lot lower. It's just that's the way it is. Probably something to do with the fact that we experiment on animals all the time, so we can't apply the same standards to them that we apply to humans. It's kind of a cruel reality.
Right.
But this cruel reality was turned into an advantage by this startup company, and they went for the dogs.
Wow.
And this is for large dogs that actually don't live long, because a particular protein is produced more and more and more as they age, and this therapy reduces the production of that protein. So it's really interesting to see how they approach this, and this is the kind of innovation that we really need to have in order to kickstart this approach to restoring elastin fiber. So people need to agitate for this. If you think that your healthcare system is going to come along and fix this for you, you are sadly mistaken. I mean, it's kind of like the AIDS epidemic, eh? It wasn't until a whole bunch of Hollywood stars got it that they started developing really meaningful therapies for it. It's exactly the same with elastin fiber. Go elastic of life. Let's start a campaign. You know, save the elastic of life.
Yeah.
I'm serious. You know.
I love it.
So, and that's why I wrote the book. The book is called Discovering the Nature of Longevity, and it's designed to help people understand how this all happened, what this elastin fiber does, who discovered it, and the tale of the discovery is really interesting itself. We can get into it in a minute if we have time. But the fact of the matter is that we need to agitate. I wrote the book for that. You can get it on Amazon, and please inform yourself, because you're not going to hear about this from the conventional medical community. Most doctors have only recently started to be trained in what elastin fiber actually is. For years and years and years, even though it was known about, there was no way to treat it. So it was only the surgeons who cut through the elastin fiber who actually knew about it.
Fascinating stuff. So in your book, do you give, because I know what you're, and I hear you saying, yes, talk to your pharmacist, talk to your doctor, go talk, but how do you actually, I guess, how do you actually get them to listen? That's what I'm trying to kind of figure out. Do you have steps in your book on how we can start to get people to listen?
Well, first of all, the answer is yes. And the first thing to do is inform yourself, period.
Sure.
Right? I mean, knowledge is the first thing to do. The vast majority of people watching and listening to your program have never heard of elastin fiber. They and that's, so read the book. And then at least you'll have a grounding. And the book isn't just about elastin fiber. It's about the things that attack it and the things that degrade it and how that can be avoided and how that's all being treated. And it tells the stories of the discoverers who actually did this and how they made these discoveries. So it's also a bunch of whodunits. Through a chapter to keep it entertaining, because it's not a science book. It's written for people who just want to know what this is all about, and that's why I call it the nature of longevity, because this is elastin fiber is truly at the core of the nature of healthy longevity. So the answer to your question is it tells people what it is, what's attacking it, and it gives them clues for what they can do right now, like improving air quality and all the things that I talked about. And then they can go out and they can activate on this.
Right. So let's do that. Let's talk just briefly about how it was discovered. Is that a quickie conversation?
Yeah, it can be. It can be a really long one as well. So the therapies were discovered in two different ways. One, as I mentioned in Australia, was they discovered how to create a scaffold on which they can build the elastin fiber, and then they put it on the wound, and the body takes over the completion of that scaffolding. So you put the scaffold on the wound, and it already has this tropoelastin treatment, and then your body takes that over and starts reassembling the elastin fiber. That's a very simplistic explanation of a very complex process. Now, in Clemson, Professor Vivahari did an amazing thing. He was looking at why do heart valves get stiff, and everyone knows that heart valves have to be replaced because they calcify. They turn to stone, and then they don't do this. They don't flap open and close anymore, and they have to be replaced either synthetically or otherwise. And he was researching this, and lo and behold, he discovered that actually one side of the valve calcifies a lot more than the other, and he couldn't figure out why. He just couldn't understand it. And then he went deeply into the structure of the valves, and what he discovered was that one side of the valve has a whole pile of elastin in it, and the other doesn't.
Just naturally?
So sorry?
So just naturally? So that's how
naturally.
All of us are created?
We're built that way.
Interesting.
Right? And so the part that had the elastin in it, as it was degrading, what was happening was that the inflammatory response from that degradation, what does your body do? First, it tries to repair it with inflammation and clearing away all the stuff. Then it tries to rebuild it. Sorry, nothing there to rebuild with. Then, as a last resort, it tries to wall it off. What does it use? It uses calcium phosphate, hard as rock, right?
Yep.
It's calcification. And so it tries to wall it off. And unfortunately, that walling off creates this vast stiffness in your arteries and in the heart valve. So that stiffening and that calcification was caused by the degradation of elastin fiber. And that's what he discovered. Then after that, he had to figure out what to do about it other than surgery. And he started looking around for a whole bunch of chemicals. And he had heard that substances called tannins can actually help to restore human tissue. And so he started playing around with all the different types of tannins, and he came across, lo and behold, pentagalloyl-glucose. And that was the one that did the magic. That was the one that kick-started the reassembly. So it was a lot of trial and error, right? Trying one thing, trying the next, and trying the next. So first there was the discovery of the fact that elastin was causing this problem in the first place. And then there was the discovery of what could kickstart that process. And that all took, 15 years for him to do that. And one of the reasons it took him 15 years is because he had to convince the National Institutes of Health that this was something that was worth doing, make all the applications for the grants and everything else. And now, 20 years later, even today, the companies that are working on elastin therapy have between them not even raised $1 billion. And $1 billion is short change in the pharmaceuticals industry. It's a multi-trillion-dollar industry. And there are hundreds of billions of dollars invested into cancer drugs and heart disease drugs, and less than $750 million into repairing the stuff that drives every move we make and every breath we take. What is wrong with this picture?
Well, also it's a natural substance, right? And so, can you not trademark, patent? You can't patent a natural substance. Is that correct?
Well, oddly enough, using this substance to repair elastin is patented. But so
well,
they
that's
did.
what I was wondering.
Amazingly enough, it got patented. And also, one other very important thing got patented, and this is the other side of the story. Professor Charles Rice, also at Clemson, Dr. Vivahari went to him and said, how do we get this stuff to the artery, He said, well, you do it with an antibody that's specialized for elastin fiber. And there were antibodies out there that did that, but they weren't so specific. So Dr. Rice developed an antibody that is specific for damaged elastin fiber. Then they connected that to the drug by loading the drug into a tiny little particle, and then they injected it into animals. And lo and behold, the antibody went straight for the damaged elastin, let go of its load, the load released the polyphenols, and the elastin started repairing itself. That's how it happened.
That's crazy.
Isn't that wild? And so this is a bit of rocket science, you can imagine this is happening at the nanometer level. So the particle is 50 nanometers wide, which is like a thousandth the thickness of a human hair. And then it's fixed onto an antibody that's about the same size. And then all of that, the particle is loaded with the drug. So that's a very sophisticated and frustrating process. It's not the only way to do it. The other ways are to use this device that I talked about earlier that they're using for aneurysms. And, the other way is to do a scaffold. So it's really exciting that all these different methods are happening for this, but we need to accelerate it big time. From hundreds of millions to tens of billions. And that's what we've been trying to do at Elastrin Therapeutics, which is a company which I co-founded that works on this. Clemson has been trying to do it. Tony Weiss has been trying to do it. but it's frustrating because there's no political will in the system. And that's why we need the support of people with all these conditions, all these heart conditions, all these tendon injuries, the football teams that have got all the injuries, all of that. They're losing big money. They need to pay attention to this.
So a question for you, kind of backing up just a little bit, and this is just my own curiosity. How do you test for damaged elastin, and then how do you test to see if it's repairing? Do you know?
Something that's a really good question. In animals, of course, you sacrifice the animal.
Okay.
In humans, they do biopsies.
Okay.
So you can, in the biopsy, you can see whether or not this stuff has been damaged. But we also know for a fact from all of the thousands of studies that have been done, it's there. The elastin damage is definitely there. We don't have to guess. You do have to quantify it, that's for sure. And that's being done also with tracers. But you got to be very careful how you use tracers because they can be radioactive. But oddly enough, they do use radioactive tracers in the human body for other things. So it's not like it's not used. And those tracers can light up the damaged elastin. So there are ways to do that. But there are also, parts of the body that you can see into. Like you can see just below the surface of the skin with certain devices at a very, very high level of focus through, near infrared, for example. And there you can see the elastin damage. So you can see it in certain parts of the body. You can track it, and you can target it. So all of this is great news, but we need to save the elastic of life. Keep going.
So my assumption is at this point, your goal is to get the book out there. You're speaking, you're getting on podcasts, you're doing all of these things to continue to forward this movement of understanding elastin and figuring out the therapies for reversing elastin damage. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that's exactly right. And I'm just going to do a little promo here.
Yeah.
There's the book, Discovering the Nature of Longevity, Restoring the Heart and Body by Targeting Hidden Stress. You can get it on Amazon, and it's been on the bestseller list several times. So some people are paying attention to it. And but you're absolutely right. But we need help. A lot of help. We need people to do what they've been doing with these other diseases. Is scream blue murder and say, why are you doing something about this?
Yeah.
That's really important.
Okay.
And it's to the credit of shows like yours that we can start spreading the word.
Awesome. Well, I'm grateful that you are on. How do people find you?
They can find me at my website, which the short name for the website is calcify.com. CALCIFY.com, as in calcification that we talked about. And the long one is natureoflongevity, all one word.com. Natureoflongevity.com. And you can contact me through the website.
Awesome. I love it. Well, I want to throw out there real quick that because we're doing this and we're doing it as a series, so next week we are going to be digging into the issues surrounding what is causing the degradation of the elastin and, of course, all of these health issues that we struggle with. But I did talk a little bit about the labs that we can do, and I spoke with our lab company. I think we're going to have them on with us next week because they... Great. Yeah, it's exciting stuff. This is Vibrant America, who does really cutting-edge functional lab testing that helps. I mean, they're essentially all I use, right? And they really help me to understand how a body is functioning, why it's functioning as it is, what's going on, and how we can get to that deeper level of what is causing the symptoms and the stuff, and the the body talking to us, right?
And why I think it's going to be really great to have them on, because I'm going to ask them how it is that they want to detect damaged elastin.
Ooh, fascinating. That would be fun.
Yes. So I think it would be a great discussion.
Cool.
Yeah. And they're so important to this whole thing about how you said it's problematic to detect heavy metals. You're absolutely right. We'll get into all of that in the show. Plus, why are we feeding heavy metals to all babies in America? Let me see now. So stay tuned.
Yeah. Next week's going to be a great show. So what we're doing a special on specific lab testing. If you want to look at your heavy metal load, if you want to look at your toxicant exposures, different things that we can do. Unfortunately, I didn't get the link together quick enough, but it will be posted everywhere. So posted wherever the show is, posted on Facebook. Anywhere that you find the show, you'll find the post of the link, or you'll find the link to the special that we're doing. This is like, the special that they're giving us is like $1,000 discount. It's amazing what they're doing to help people to understand their body, what's going on, and how we can better approach health and not cover it up, right? And really get to the root of the problem.
Nikki,
Yes.
first know what you have.
Yes.
That's the golden rule.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what these companies are doing.
Yeah. Cool. Well, this has been so informative and so fun. Remember, Elastin, it's the key. And join us. Come back next week. We're going to do this again next week and then the following week, so 3 weeks in a row. You can find us, of course, here every Thursday, 10 a.m. Mountain Time. And then, of course, Taste Life Nutrition is everywhere. Well, it's not everywhere, but it's where you find us, right? So the website's Taste Life Nutrition. The social medias are all Taste Life Nutrition. Reach out and let's. I have a assessment on my website. So if you are struggling with some stuff, and you want to, need a little bit of help, and maybe I can help you, or maybe I know somebody who can help you. But that's what that assessment's for, is so we can talk about it. I'm here to be of service. My goal is to help anybody and everybody I can, just like Douglas here. It's a calling to help just to live big, right? To do the big things that we were put here to do. And I think that that's really important stuff. So reach out. We'll see you again here next week, 10 a.m. Mountain Time, with Douglas and hopefully with Susie from Vibrant Labs. And we're going to have some really cool conversations. So we'll see you later. And if you want to stick with me for just a second, Douglas, I appreciate it. But thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and save the elastic of life.
Save the elastic of life. All right. All right. Thank you. Give me 1 second.